That's fun, that's fun. Is he reading that up to the personal life? Oh, sometimes probably, because I wrote in the part of reaction is not running out on sorry reacting with it. You don't have to have it, so I wrote back and I said, you never, this is once in a lifetime, I said, yeah. So that, yeah.
In case she needs an extra.
Oh. Yeah.
I don't want it.
Because I reacted.
Is that picture that you have up there, are those people like the people in white robes or?
We shall find out. Druid, how you doing? Good to see you. You're always so happy. Is he always this happy?
You should see him in the morning when you wake up.
Oh, is he a morning person?
Yeah, he's.
Oh. Oh.
Why are you against him being happy?
No, I'm against morning people.
Whoa.
Oh.
I'm not a morning person, but I can talk now.
I know, but it's like first thing in the morning, my mom was like that. It's time to wake up, it's time to be happy. I'm like, oh, one of those freaks.
Hey, he's not a freak. Yeah, but I don't think he's black.
That's right.
Since when is Ghost Rider your favorite?
He's always been his favorite.
Nah, bull. What happened to Black Lightning, Black Panther?
But I can't always do the same one. I like other ones too.
He has a bunch of favorites.
Yes.
Also, his villains. Yeah.
I think he lost weight after his last doing this.
I think I did.
Really?
I had to put it on.
It took your toll on.
Is your husband here, Joey? You put a bell on that guy. Paul, we're about to start. Alrighty, well, it's great seeing everybody tonight. Braving the rain and coming out. Oh, you only got sprinkles? You came out pretty good in the gallon for a little bit. But that's okay, I got some crazy rain last week or week before that we didn't get, so it worked. Did I missed that one? Alrighty. Probably Japanese. I'll take it. Who said he was supposed to write for Paul to bring this on? And I just realized my microphone's on. More people coming in. See, the hard part's good. I know. I just started putting T's.
Wow.
Of course, all y'all came in like right at 7, so I mean, y'all talk like I've been here for an hour.
Wow, thank you so much.
Okay. There's Paul.
Yeah, I was campaigning,
Um,
trying to get a vote.
Campaign on your own time. Okay.
All right.
See, I can't be mean. It's not my nature.
Well, there was 20 folks over there from the campaign with.
You need to see my kids. I told them you were wearing your Sesame Street shirt. They didn't believe me. Well, it's great seeing everybody tonight. As we get started, Drew, would you lead us in a prayer, please? One time I'm going to say something, you're going to be like, no, I don't want to. I'd love to. It's so chipper. Wow. Go ahead.
Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for your love for us, God. Lord, thank you for giving us the word to study, to learn from, Lord, to apply to our lives. Help us to be more like you. Help us not to just read it and store it away in knowledge banks, but Lord, that we apply it and that we live how you would have us to live, God. And Lord, help us to get encouragement to each other this evening. Lord, just bless the rest of this evening. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
What's a food you don't like? You just asked her already. What's the color you don't like?
My favorite color is shiny.
No, what's the color you don't like?
Why do you want him to be negative? Leave him alone. He's nice the way he is.
Talk about being rude.
I'm just curious, that's all. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, Troy. I'll give him my mom's number later. You can tell him.
So that he gets up those songs like that.
Yeah. All righty. Today we're moving past the letters in Revelation and getting to the good stuff, you might say. Hopefully it's all been good thus far, but now we're going to dive into some visions. And so, are you ready? We got some sheets in the back in case anybody would like to study a sheet over what we cover tonight. If we run out, give a holler, we'll get some more made. And so tonight we're going to be in Revelation chapter 4. So if you haven't done so already, you can turn there. Now, Revelation 4 and 5, what we're going to talk about in Revelation 4 and 5, they're keys to the rest of the book. Because they set the tone and are the foundation to the rest of the book. Now, let's ask this. We just did, over the course of 3 weeks, we did the 7 letters to the 7 churches of Asia. What was the point of those?
Causing them to change.
Okay, called to change is one. For what purpose? Why change? Okay, they've fallen away. What's the goal? A change for what? For what purpose?
It's encouragement. Salvation.
Okay, salvation. So where do we hope to go with salvation?
With God.
What do we have to look forward to? Why are we happy to be Christians? How come we're not all as happy as Truett? That's right. Conquer, hold on, endure. But there has to be an enduring for what? To be in the presence of the Lord. And this is what Revelation 4 and 5 are about. Being in the presence of God, and then in chapter 5, seeing the Lamb, which is Jesus. So what 4 and 5 does, I mean, we had 7 letters, Christ telling them, endure, endure, endure. Seeing examples of how Christians were persecuted, how Christians were killed, and all this. But you know what? It's okay to ask why. Why should we? Why should we hold on? Why should we care? What do we have to look forward to? And Jesus in the letters gave them clues. To he who overcomes gave them all those things. But in a veiled parable-like sense, we get to see it. in Revelation 4 and 5. We get a glimpse of heaven to see what it would look like in order to inspire us that, you know what? We do have something better to look forward to than what we have down here. This is how come Christians should be some of the most happiest people on the planet. No other reason besides we know where we're going. And that should give us hope. So this is what we're going to do. Now, the visions, like we said a minute ago, they're like parables. The special effects are important, but we're not supposed to be so distracted by them that we miss the lessons we're supposed to be learning. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you what everything means, scrutinizing it down to the smallest bit where we have to know what each thing means. No, that's not as important as the bigger picture. Now, the major theme of Revelation is the power and majesty of God and Jesus. The throne becomes the central point. Because again, remember what we're doing. Remember the period of time we're dealing with. Remember who's in charge. This letter is going out to a bunch of persecuted Christians being persecuted underneath the orders of Caesar, who has a lot of power, a lot of influence. But now what we're going to see in 4 and 5 is someone who has greater power. Who truly is in charge. Now, words that are going to be repeated throughout the rest of this book, looks like, appears to be, and others along these lines. We're not supposed to take everything mentioned here literally. Now, some of you are looking at me like, yeah, duh. But we have to explain that point because some people do try to take every facet of this book literally. And so that's how come you have people waiting for beasts and waiting for dragons and waiting for all this stuff to happen. So we got to, remember it's a parable. Remember they say these things look like. It's not really, does Jesus really have eyes blazing like fire? Okay, he has eyes, they're blazing with something, but is it fire? Probably not. But, John has limited vocabulary using human words in order to try to describe heavenly things. That's a big job. Okay, so the point of it, remember what we discussed in class 1, the whole point of all of this is clarity. God wants to be known. And so they use what they can in order that we can get it. We can catch up to it. So here we go. In Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "After this I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this.' And once I was in the Spirit, behold, the throne stood in heaven with one seated on the throne." Now, we have to stop here and get something out of the way. This contains what some calls the first evidence to the rapture as taught in Revelation. Everybody familiar with that term? Rapture. Okay. It's not there. Okay. This isn't there. Now, in order to help us to understand some things, I don't know if you've ever seen bumper stickers like this. I used to see them in Dallas. I don't see them too much down here, but I think Dallas has a bigger Baptist base. But in case a rapture vehicle will be unmanned, stuff like that. It's like, well, that's great for the rest of us. In fact, some atheist groups have actually combated this by coming up with their own, in case of rapture, can I have your car? And stuff like this, Part of me laughs. I don't know if I should be in trouble for that. But, anyway, it's a big deal with people. People are still waiting for the rapture. They're waiting for the 1,000-year reign. They're waiting for the tribulation. They're waiting for all this that goes with it. And we'll talk more about that as this book progresses. But first and foremost, there's something very important I want you to understand about rapture theology. Now, here's some inventions that were created in the 1800s. The 1800s gave us our first battery, and also our first arc lamp, and our first electromagnet. Matches were invented in 1827. Interesting little side note, the lighter was invented before the match. Braille was invented in 1829. Now, you know what one thing all these have in common? They're older than rapture theology. Rapture theology wasn't created until 1830 by John Darby. Again, some people try to talk about how it's been in the Bible all this time, and it hasn't even been around 200 years. It's not even been around 200 years. So you're going to tell me that we've just missed, the first 1900 years of church history? They just missed it? No, it's not there. The closest that they can get to anything earlier than 1830 was a complete accident. It happened in 1744 by a guy named Morgan Edwards, who wrote a short essay on a college paper for Bristol Baptist College in Bristol, England, where he confused, and he admits this, or he admitted it's past tense, he's not still around. He confused the second coming with the first resurrection out of Revelation chapter 20 and described the pre-tribulation rapture. However, Edwards' ideas, which he admitted were brand new and never taught, had no influence in the modern population and the false doctrine, and so the price will goes to dark. So this is, but that's all. That's as long as it's been around. In case anybody comes to you, starts talking rapture or things that go along with it, it's like, oh, it's always been there. All the 1830s. Matches are older than the rapture. Okay. Braille's older. The steam engine is older than the rapture. Oh, it gets better with this stuff. Now, 1901, the vacuum cleaner. God bless 1902, the air conditioning was invented. Everybody say amen. Automatic steam maker. 1903, the electrocardiogram. 1904, radar. 1905, plastic. 1906, radio broadcasting. 07, electric washing machine. 08, the coffee filter, water cooler, paper cups, assembly line productions. And the Model T, the coffee filter is the same age as the car. Is that weird to anybody else? Well, actually, I guess what gets to me is windshield wipers are older than the Model T. Neon lamps, 1910, 1911, sail type machines, 13, Brillo pads and crossword puzzles, 16, sonar, 20, hair dryers, knowledge, television later in 1925, rockets in 1926, talking movies in 1927, penicillin in 1928, the jet engine in 1930. Why do I bring this up? Because the jet engine and the sinner's prayer are the exact same age. If you're not familiar with the sinner's prayer was started by Billy Sunday in 1930, and it's the prayer that's taught to people that you don't need baptism, you don't need any other thing to try to take away. Now, all you got to do, if you want Christ to come into your life, is to say this prayer. It's in the Bible, and it's always been in the Bible. Say this prayer, and you'll be forgiven, you'll be one of God's children. It basically has all the benefits of being a child of God without having to go through baptism. But it's in the Bible, and we can take it where it is. It hasn't even been around 100 years yet. I have a typo there. It says, I have 1935 on here, so I had to go back and fix it. I do my best editing after I hit send and print. And
What groups use that?
Sinner's Prayer? Branches of Baptist is the biggest. I think also maybe Pentecostal and just some groups like that.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. It's more of a, my understanding is it's more of a Baptist byline. They'll even do baptism, but baptism is just it's an outward sign of an inward transformation. And you have a little, you have to be baptized into the church, but not into the relationship with Christ and stuff like this. It's not a baptism for it's not a baptism for the redemption of sins. It's a baptism into membership. And just like I say, it gets twisted. In other groups, they'll have like a once a month mass baptism thing. But you've already done what you needed. You said the prayer, and then this was picked up by Billy Graham, and I said 1935, but he didn't start preaching on his own until like 1945 or 47. 1935 is when he turned his life to Christ, and actually later Billy Graham, the one who was baptized. And so again, but the thing is like people are going to come, or people have come to Revelation. It's one of the reasons why some people are uncomfortable with the book, because we have forgotten in some instances what has actually been taught, because it's been taken by other people, messed up. Other people have gone in and ruined it for the rest of us. And so we got to fix it and take it back. So, but where this comes from is the whole, I looked and behold a door standing open and Christ inviting me to come up here and I'll show you what must take place. To say, see, look, he's taking John. He came near and took John out of the world. Rapture. Because that's what rapture is. Christ is going to come close and take the faithful one day before the second coming. That's what he did to John in
If
Revelation.
he did it to John, it has to be comparable.
First of all, is that what he did to John? No, it is not what he did to John. It is not what he did to John, because after he says this, there's the crucial line we talked about before. And once I was in the Spirit, boom, keyword for vision. And once I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne stood in heaven with one seated on the throne. Okay, so we're now in a vision. The vision is going to center around the throne of God. Thinking of this like a parable, what is the importance of John being taken through a door and the first thing he sees is the throne? What is he? What's Christ trying to tell him about heaven? How far do you have to go into heaven before you witness God's majesty?
Through the door.
You gotta go through the door. That's it. You gotta go through the door, and there it is. You know, it's not like, I've never been to Washington, D.C. I've never seen the White House. I've never seen any of the monuments or anything like that. Because I live in Texas. All right? And I've never gone east. All right, as far east as I've ever gone is like Missouri, Arkansas. All right, that's as far east as I've ever gone in the
I've
country.
seen Mount Rushmore.
I've seen Mount Rushmore. Yes, I have seen Mount Rushmore. But this is the thing: I can't see the White House from Texas. I have pretty good vision. I can't see the White House from Texas. I can't see Mount Rushmore from Texas. I can't see any of the monuments from Texas. How far do we have to go inside heaven in order to see the majesty of God? I bet you can see it before you get inside the door. But the thing is like, you can take that same application and apply it to Rome. You know, Rome is where Caesar lives. Yeah, you had the idol worship and everything, all, various places. But, once you get outside of Rome, it was different. Inside Rome, the majesty, you had garrisons, but in Rome you had majesty. It was the imperial city. But once you got outside, it was a little bit different. But heaven, as soon as we are there, the majesty of God is everywhere. Everything in the vision is interpreted to its location and reference to the throne of God. This is why don't get sidetracked by the living creatures and the elders. Okay, we're going to talk about all that stuff. But their main points is basically to tell us where they are in reference to the throne. Because the throne is the most important part of this vision. So what does it say? It says in verse 3, it says, "And he who sits there had the appearance of jasper and carnelian, and around the throne was a rainbow that had the appearance of an emerald." Okay, so we have the one who sat there. The one who sat there had the appearance of things which are precious to humans. Again, trying to put it in human terms. God's not a walking crystal. All right? Or if he is, it's only because he wants to be. But that's just as close as John can get to figure out why. Because God's not human. Now, we have been made in the image of God. We have God's mentality, God's emotion. But God's not human. Does that bother us? Ever? God was never human outside of 33 years, about 2,000 years ago. All creation is subject to God, who is sitting on the central throne. Stones suggest beauty and majesty, which are tempered or given clarity by the rainbow emerald, such as light through a prism. Some see this as judgment tempered by mercy, or just kind of see this as the all outward beauty of everything the majesty of God contains. And nothing on earth compared to it. I don't know how long John lived after this. Do you think he ever forgot this? Nothing on earth compares to the majesty of heaven. But it didn't stop there. Around the throne, there were 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders clothed in white garments with golden crowns on their heads. Okay, now the question gets asked, who are they? And I was like, finally. Who are they? Who do y'all think they are? Have you ever heard anything? Have you ever heard a theory or anything? Who these people might be?
The prophets and the saints.
What?
The prophets and the saints.
Okay, yeah, that's a good theory. That's kind of where I am.
What you said?
Prophets and the saints. You know, some people have said that, suggest that these are angels. How come this isn't angels? Why?
They look human.
Do it?
They look human.
They look human.
Look at the picture.
I know, look at the picture. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You look before, represent something.
We'll talk about the horsemen later. Some people think it's not angels. And the reason why they're not angels is because they're called elders. In the Bible, in the context of the Bible, elders have always been human. Some people have called this the rapture church. Obviously, that's wrong because the rapture, as that is taught, does not exist. Some people call it a combination of the beast and created beings. Okay, let's break this down and consider what we know. They're called elders. Now, again, the term elder was only used with human men of a certain age. Okay? We're not going to call little Nate Corrales in here, all 2 or 3 years old of him, and call him an elder. Okay? They're clothed in white garments. Does that sound familiar after listening to the 7 letters? What was so important about white garments? It was purity. Jesus told the church of Sardis in Revelation 3:5, the one who conquers will be clothed thus in white garments. I mean, this is what they got for being faithful on earth. They get clothed with white garments given to them by Christ. So it is purity, but it's also endurance. It's conquering the world. It's professing the name of Christ in horrible situations. It is keeping on being faithful. And so after they did this, they were clothed in white. Okay, they had golden crowns. They got to receive golden crowns. Does this sound familiar? Just bring up an image.
So, Jeff, you're saying that the being called elders here in this particular place didn't have anything to do with, say, an office or something that they had been appointed or called to.
We'll get to it. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 11, it says, I am coming soon. Hold fast to what you have so that no one may seize your crown. Because winners wear a crown, losers wear a crown. All right? So don't make, again, but it's also, this is also a throwback to people who have endured, people who have been faithful, sitting on thrones. You jump down to the letter of Laodicea, the one who conquers, I'll grant him to sit with me on my throne, as I also conquered and sat down with my Father on his throne. But who else did Jesus promise thrones to? Oh, don't mumble. Come on. Who else did Jesus promise thrones to?
His disciples?
There it is. Good job, Will. Flip back to Matthew 19. See, don't you see? This is why Revelation is so awesome. You see how it's building on itself and then also building on the rest of the Bible. The whole book's this way. In Revelation chapter 19, Matthew chapter 19 and verse 28, Jesus talking to the rich young man. at the end of it, after the rich young man goes away sad, and then the disciples are just blown away, they say, well, goodness sakes, the rich guy who was seen as blessed by God by the rest of the people, if he can't make it to heaven, then who can? Well, Jesus says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Peter then says, see, we have left everything and followed you, what then will we have? And Jesus says this, truly I say to you, in a new world, when the Son of Man will sit on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. There's 12.
It couldn't have been Judas.
Matthias.
Matthias.
2 Timothy chapter 2. Second Timothy chapter 2. Some other verses to consider. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 11 says, the saying is trustworthy. If we have died with him, we have also lived with him. If we endure, we also reign with him. If we deny him, he also will deny us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. Who gets to reign? We do, the faithful. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24. Paul talking about just life in general. Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. What does Paul work for? What's his hope? An imperishable crown. If you go back to the first century world and you train yourself hard for these races and all these ancient Olympics, you win, you get a lovely little wreath of flowers, or sometimes even celery. Watch out now. That you get to take home for all your training. Hey, you know what? They didn't, as we talked about this morning, they didn't have H-E-B or Walmart back in the day, so. He said, but that's all those plant crowns, they die. We're training for something that doesn't die, an imperishable crown. Again, go back to 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 4. This is some of Paul's last words that he wrote that were recorded in the Bible. He says, this is verse 6. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also who have loved his appearing. Now, let's contemplate this one for a little bit. What's he excited to get? Crown of life or the crown of righteousness. Now then, how did he get this? What did he say he did? Yeah. What's all that? What is this pretty Bible language for? What kind of qualities are we talking about?
Encouragement.
Endurance, conquering the world. Those same things that we're talking about in Revelation. Now again, 12 is a perfect number. And again, the idea of the 12. As we'll see when we talk about the 144,000, it's an all-encompassing number. It's about all who are faithful, all who endure, all who conquer, get to look forward to having this crown. Now consider, because again, that only gets us to 12. What about the other half of the equation? Consider Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. He says, so then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure being joined together grows into a holy temple in the Lord. In him you also are being built together into a dwelling place for God by the Spirit. Okay, tell me about this temple of God. How is it being built? I love to hear people think it. Okay, who's the foundation? You can't have a building without a foundation, but what was the foundation?
Jesus.
Who? Prophets and the apostles. How did we get to here? How is it that we're still teaching and talking about Jesus now? Yeah. Who does the prophets represent? Old Testament. Who do the apostles represent? New Testament. Coming together to form the perfect Word of God. This is how come it's important to know our Old Testaments. Because there's great hope found in the Old Testament scriptures. The kingdom of heaven got here through the work of the prophecies of the Old Testament. Thousands of years of prophecy coming down the line, prophesying the Messiah, waiting for the one who would fulfill it all. Now, with the work of the New Testament, all brought together with the law of prophecy fulfillment of Jesus, which unleashed the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is a product of the Old and the New Testaments. The elders sitting around the throne of God, again, who are they specifically? But my take, 12 apostles and 12 patriarchs or prophets. In other words, a representation of Old and New Testaments. I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. That's a very powerful word, fulfillment. Even though after he fulfilled it, they didn't have to do stuff like offer sacrifices and some of the other stuff. We cannot forget what it meant that Jesus didn't abolish it. He just didn't do away with it. It's not like a traffic cop who would just give you a warning on a speed stop and let you go your way. Whatever. That's not what he did. He fulfilled it. He made it true. And so these elders, they're a representation of all of that work. Old and New Testament, 12 apostles, 12 prophets. But there was more than 12 prophets. But some combination of this, which ties the Old and New Testament together, because both look to God, and both the Old and New Testaments look to Jesus Christ. It's all about him. Anybody, question or comment? Elma, is that clear as mud? But here's the kicker. It's not as important who they are as it is what they are doing. That's the important part. But we don't get that yet. In verse 4 it says, around the throne there were 24 thrones, and seated on thrones were 24 elders, clothed in white garments with golden crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. And before the throne there were burning 7 torches of fire, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was as it were a sea of glass like crystal. Okay. Flip back with me to Exodus chapter 24. Does any of that description, thunder, lightning, and all this? There we go. Going back to a Mount Sinai event. Why is Mount Sinai so important? That's where God appeared to Moses. And if you read Exodus chapter 24 and verse 9, it says, then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. Let that verse just sink in, brother. They saw the God of Israel. But what did they see? They were under his feet as it were a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven for clearness. And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. You get a little bit, but you get that same image of the crystal-like plain out around him and all that. You also, if you read more about the Sinai account, you get the thunder, you get the lightning, you get the clouds, and you get the whole shebang. But this is supposed to harken back to that. Going back. In other words, it's the same God that they read about in Exodus That's what John is seeing again. God, after all this time, has not changed. Okay, question or comment before we continue? All right, let's talk about the beasts. 4 beasts. It says, and around the throne, on each side of the throne, are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a man, and the fourth living creature like an eagle in flight. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes all around within and day. And okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so you got the 4 beasts. Now again, the beasts are not the horsemen. There's all sorts of creatures in Revelation. But what are the beasts? Have we ever heard descriptions like this before? You ever heard of the 6-winged angel? Go to Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. And this was part of the vision that Isaiah received of God still sitting on the throne.
Isaiah what?
Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1.
Would those angels be called the seraphim?
Seraphim, that's right. In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1, it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting up on a throne, high and lifted up, on the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face. With 2 he covered his feet. And with 2 he flew and called to one another and said, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Now I want to take you to a groovy section, which is Ezekiel chapter 1, starting in verse 4. Now the reason I call this a groovy section, this is actually, Ezekiel chapter 1 is actually a part of the Bible where alien enthusiasts claim that UFOs are discussed in the Bible. And I'm not joking. You know, I'm completely serious. The whole wheel within a wheel thing, that's a UFO.
Well, yeah, and that is unidentified.
Yeah.
But not what they're thinking.
Yeah. Check this out. Ezekiel chapter 1 and verse 4. We're only going to go down to verse 14 because this goes on for the whole thing, but let's consider this. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it. Okay.
I'm with you, go ahead.
Okay, with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces, and each of them had 4 wings. Their legs were straight, and their soles of their feet were like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like burnished bronze. Under their wings, on their 4 sides, they had human hands, and on the 4 had their faces and their wings thus. Their wings touched one another. Each one of them went straight forward without turning as they went. As for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. The 4 had the face of a lion on the right side. The 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. The 4 had the face of an eagle. Such were their faces, and their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wings of another, while 2 covered their bodies. And each went straight forward wherever the Spirit would go. They went without turning as they went. As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, like the appearance of torches moving to and fro among the living creatures. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Now, alrighty, who's impressed?
I am.
Yeah. But here's the thing, if you keep on reading that, here's the kicker. You know, as impressive as the seraphim are in the book of Isaiah, as impressive as the creatures are in the Ezekiel's vision, notice where the creatures are. It's all about reference to the throne. As impressive as the creatures are, they are merely holding up the throne of God. We read that and we say, wow. But again, it's not about what they are or what they represent. It's about what they are doing. And what they do day and night is they praise God. That's more important than what they are. You take it apart. Lion, king of the jungle. Ox, the king of domesticated animals. Eagle, the king of the air. Man, the king of intelligent beings. But it's not about what they mean. It's about what they are doing. The image parable of the four beasts is about all creation bowing down and worshiping God. Because this is what it says after the description in Revelation 4. And the four living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, are full of eyes around and within, and day and night they never cease to say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. That's their priority. That's why they're there. And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before him who is seated on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Worthy are you, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and was created. Yes. And they bow their crowns down.
That holy, holy, holy is the way they use superlatives in the Bible. Like we would say holy, holier, holiest.
Yes.
And they do it by repetition afterward.
Right. And this is also very similar to what they were saying in the Isaiah vision. Same thing. So why does it not matter as much who the 24 are, but what they are doing? It's because they are also worshiping God. That's it. God is on his throne as the central event in heaven. When one day it's our time to pass through the pearly gates, what is going to be stop number 1 on your things to see in heaven tour? Who have you been waiting to see all your life? Jesus, God, right? If we are in a position where the worship of God is frowned upon by the state to the point of punishment, and we have to go through that, why should we be willing to go through that when it would be just easier to shut up about God? What should we have to look forward to? The throne of God.
Well, and part of what we're supposed to be learning here is endurance.
Yep.
And the people this was written to, they were having to endure a lot. I mean, we've got it really easy.
We do have it easy. We absolutely do. And in this time, this time and place here. Other parts of the world, not so much. But for us right now, yeah. But we got to go back and remember what the central event in heaven. It was talked about this Sunday. We have to go back to what the central mission of the church is. It's about evangelism. It's about bringing other people to Christ so that they can have this hope too. Because this is what we have to look forward to. I love I can't remember the guy's name, but he said something along the lines of, if we're not excited about God now, we're going to be bored in heaven. Why would we want to go? You ever think of it that way? If we're not excited about God now, why would we want to go to heaven?
And they wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
The people that don't like God, they're going to be surrounded by people that do,
Right.
that praise him all day long. They're going to be, why am I here?
All the interesting image we will see in this book moving forward are going to be interesting. Some of them are going to be a little bit hard to explain. It might be hard for us to get the first time around. And we might say, well, wait a minute, run that by me again. That's cool. Totally prepared to do that. That's one of the reasons why the class is so fun. But what we have to remember is that nothing that we're going to see in this book is going to compare, is going to hold a candle up to the majesty, the power, or the sheer presence of God. Nothing. Also, it is not going to matter how strong something appears to be. One day we are all going to bow before the throne. Every knee shall bow, every tongue will confess, because we won't be able to help it. That will be the knee-jerk gut reaction when we come to the presence of God. It's just what's going to happen. Including Domitian, who was Caesar at the time. And including everybody today who tries to put themselves and think they're on some sort of seat of power. Send prayer for them. God's power is eternal. And that, in a nutshell, is Revelation 4. Anybody have a question or comment? Oh, wow! I never got applauded. No, but really, anyway.
It breaks down. Sometimes you try to study it and you just do several chapters and you just think, what did I just read? You know, what is this all about? Like how that was breaking it down.
Yeah. And it's going to build. It's going to build upon itself. Next week, I want y'all, next week's going to be a great time to come. So if you came this week, come next week. Be sure to come next week because we get the second introduction of Jesus in a very wonderful way. So be sure to be here for that. Bring a friend. You know, I'm sure we all have people who've been either scared or don't get this book. Have them come out. See what we do. So, but I thank you all for coming out. And again, I hope this has been a help. You know, so I hope we're helping. I hope we're bringing clarity instead of just more muddleness. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it is now. But okay, let's see. We'll go over our prayer sheets. Okay. Violet has asked for during our prayers of Thanksgiving for our church family and friends, for all the prayers and blessings that she's received. Delia and Javier Ortegon also wish to share prayers of Thanksgiving. Remy asked us to pray for his entire family, and Dora asked us to pray for good health. I got a text from the Guerrero family. You notice they're not here. Bobby had to work tonight. Harper has strep throat, flu, and Brianna has strep throat. So we're in that period of time where our kids, who we love so much, bring home the germs. And so, and so we need to pray for them. Also, you might notice, the Vasquez family isn't here as well. Marcelo is also ill with the flu and had to be home. So, so that's where they are tonight as well. It was Morgan? I thought it was Marcelo. It's Morgan? Okay. So, yes, when you have multiple kids, they start with the same letter. It's just not fair.
That's not fair.
I know, bro. Thank you. That's what's wrong. I've been so disappointed. No wonder I'm not more happy, truly. Jolene gave us this just in. Greg Adams, one of her cousins, suddenly passed away this morning after a bad seizure. He was 41 years old and left behind a wife and 4 kids, ranging from ages 2 to 15. So, pray for them. Where they live? Oh, Houston. Oh, so not Alabama. Oh, okay. Is there anything else we need to add?
I took Kate yesterday the same problem. Yes. They told me I was not the flu, but she needs to go with a specialist for the allergies. It's super strong.
Allergies?
Yes. Now her allergies is more complicated like mine.
Has she had the balloon sinuplasty yet?
I didn't, it doesn't work.
She's talking about Kay, her daughter.
So Kate is going to, well, we're going to look at let's see. I went with all the doctors in the valley. So I don't know, we're going to a different one.
Okay.
And continue praying for my brother. Now he's gonna have a surgery because they find something that's not right. He's still doing the every week.
Dialysis. Are they looking to do a kidney surgery then? Is that,
I don't think so. No, I think they found an hernia,
oh, hernia?
big one, and he needs an emergency surgery. Again, he doesn't have money in Mexico. All this is here.
Yeah.
Over there, you have to have money in here to able to go to the hospital.
Right.
There's not such a thing as emergency like here.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I'm having a procedure, I hope tomorrow. In May, I had cataract surgery, one on one eye, the first part, and the other the last. And I have a film, and so I think they do like a little laser thing. And that, I'm hoping it's tomorrow, because in 15 days, I'm going through.
So this is going down tomorrow?
I hope so. I have an appointment. Doctor, I wish, I couldn't get in. Dr. Well, I'll have to show you the name of your phone.
Anybody else? Alrighty. Well, if you will, join me in prayer again. I'm so thankful that y'all have chosen to be out here this evening. So, do we have anything to announce for this week?
Yeah,
Yeah, going on Saturday at Danny's before 95. What time is that?
9.
9 o'clock. Or latest. Go eat. And
Where's it
it's,
at?
yeah, it's at Danny's Restaurant on 495.
Yeah, okay, okay.
You know the Chopsticks
I was there
restaurant?
the other day.
Okay, you know where it is. Okay. All right. If you will pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day that you bless us with, and we're so thankful that you have brought us here today. We're so thankful for the rain that you have blessed us with, and that we ask that you be with those who have asked for our prayers, be with so many families who are undergoing flu and strep, and we pray that these families may be brought back to health. We pray that you be with Kay, who's having severe allergy issues, and that an answer may be found. We ask you to be with Blanca's brother. We also ask you to be with Macy as she undergoes eye surgery tomorrow. We ask you to be with the Adams family, who is mourning the loss of Greg, and we pray that you may bring peace to this family. We thank you for everything that you have shown us, and we're so pleased and so glad and so thankful that we have your throne to look forward to. And we pray that we may continue to endure and keep going and strive to get that crown. That we may also be one of the saints who encircle your throne, worshiping you day and night. We pray that we may continue to look forward to this. In Jesus' name, amen.
You're not used to worship here. Sojourner, he recommended him to leave every position. Hey, Jerry, he started eating like white meat. He said like allergies. But I inherited allergies. I used
I hope to be here Wednesday, but that's.
Ayer vino, digo él. Esta semana, cuando vino, le estaba platicando porque no me había hecho.
Hey, now I can look at y'all.